I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Yeah, did you guys make it through the weekend without a hailstorm?
There were very bad damages in the south of Bordeaux, in the Sauternes Barsac area,
Oh no.
and a little bit in the north where we are, but it was very limited. Um, but you could see hail that big,
Wow.
hailstones that big. It's very strange weather. It was very hot last week, and then today it's quite chilly, and we had so much rain, Celine. We
Yeah.
had in 36 hours we had a full month of rain.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's
oh
still
my gosh.
pouring. It's yesterday, the night before, pouring. The rivers are all
Oh,
over. Half of the Medoc is blocked.
oh
uh,
wow.
yeah, Saint Laurent, you cannot go through the city. I mean, it's a village, the village of Saint Laurent in the
Yeah.
middle. It's a big mess.
Oh wow. So you weren't able to make it up to Phelan Segur today?
No, I was not supposed to go to Phelan Segur today because, with this COVID situation, we have
Mm-hmm.
set up an organization where we go to the office when we need, but we try not to go to at the same time, everybody.
Yeah,
So I'm
makes
going to be
sense.
there on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
Yeah,
We have to adapt.
exactly.
So Veronique, let's get started. For all of you just joining in, if you haven't been on this live before, my name is Celine Del Ventura, and I am the Bordeaux Grand Cru manager, buyer at Touton Selection. And we are lucky to have a very special guest with us today, Veronique Dausse, from Chateau Phelan Segur in Saint-Estèphe. And Veronique, maybe if you could just get started off with introducing yourself, introducing the property that you represent, and we'll go from there.
So I'm Veronique Dausse. I've been running Chateau Phelan Segur for the last 10 years. And I have a very special relationship to America, to the US, because actually I was trained in Napa when I was 19 years old, in a winery called Clos Duval, quite famous, I guess, in the US. And that's where thanks to Bernard Portet, I learned almost everything of what I know right now on wines, going from the vineyards to the winery, to the tasting room, to the road where I was working with some salespeople. So that was something absolutely incredible. And then because I had to go back to France for my family, because I'm from a family farming, in the farming environment. We had a farm, and my grandmother was from Italy, from Piemonte, and family means something there. So I was asked to go back and join the family again.
Okay.
So I worked then always in the wine industry, always in Languedoc, in a very exciting time of the early 90s, where we discovered what varietal meant, like Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon. Nobody knew about that in the
Mm-hmm.
France, because everybody was talking about appellation, and you know that we have wine almost all over France, so everybody's talking about its own appellation area. So that was very exciting. And actually, we were working a lot with the US at that time. And then I moved to Champagne for 12 years. So I worked for 12 years in Champagne. That was absolutely extraordinary. And for personal reasons, I went back to where I was almost born, which is Bordeaux. And totally by chance, because totally by chance, I met with the former owner of Chateau Phelan Segur, a wonderful man called Thierry Gardinier, a wonderful family. And that was almost like love at first sight. I was not looking for a job, and he actually was looking for a managing director. So he offered me the job. I said no. Uh, and after 2 or 3 months, actually it lasts quite a long time, of thinking, my family told me that it was a good choice.
That's
And
funny.
that's funny. And that's how it started with Phelan Segur. And this fairy tale hasn't stopped, even if we have changed family, because Phelan Segur was created by an Irish family back in the 19th century. The Phelan, even if Phelan sounds very French, it's actually Irish by origin. And so we remain in this Irish environment for almost 100 years until the very beginning of the 20th century. And then the property went from one family to another. We were sold to a family very famous in Bordeaux called the Delon family. One of the branches right now is the owner of Léoville Lascaz in Saint-Julien. So the Delon sold the property to the Gardinier family. Alors, the Gardinier are very famous in France because they own very top-end restaurants and hotels. One of them being Le Taillevent in Paris. It used to be a 3 Michelin star restaurant. Now it's a 2 Michelin star restaurant, and it was very famous. And I think it's still very famous in the US. Actually, there are a lot of American people going there. It's a great classic gastronomy, beautiful place. And they also have a Relais Chateau in Reims, in Champagne, the heart of Champagne, called Les Crayères. Absolutely exquisite, beautiful place. And in January 2019, the chateau was sold to a Belgian family was run by a gentleman called Philippe Vandevivre. And Philippe Vandevivre is from the Flemish part of Belgium. And Philippe Vandevivre is actually an extraordinary industrial guy, if I may say so. And but for us, the great thing is that he's one of these typical great Bordeaux collector and amateur and lover. You should see his when you should see his cellar. You should hear him when he talks about his wines. And he was looking for a property for some years, actually. He's a good friend of the Caz family, Jean-Michel Caz from Lynchbach. He was very good friend of Albert Frère of Cheval Blanc. So he knew a lot of people in Bordeaux. I think we were maybe the only ones not to know him, actually. And this is it. And we've been going on and going along together for the last 2 years very well. And that's a great new chapter of the Phelan Segur story opening now.
Yeah, of course. Can you back up just a second and I'm going to put up a map. Can you show us where we're situated in Saint-Estèphe? So first, let me just put up this map of the Médoc for you guys. Just a brief outline. So right where you see that dot of Bordeaux at the bottom, that's the actual city of Bordeaux. And then this whole purple area is called the Médoc region. And if you go almost to the top, the northernmost dark purple appellation is Saint-Estèphe, which is where Phelan Segur is located. And I'll show a little bit more of a zoomed in area so you guys can tell some of the neighbors here. And then Veronique, if you could just tell us a little bit about the style of Saint-Estèphe wines, what makes them different from a wine, generally speaking, what makes them different from a wine from Pauillac or Saint-Julien or Margaux? And, how does Phelan Segur kind of fit in there? Does Phelan Segur have its own distinct style within Saint-Estèphe?
So first of all, Saint-Estèphe is the most northern village appellation of the left bank of the Médoc. So the village appellation are Margaux, Listrac, Moulis, Saint-Julien, Pauillac, and Saint-Estèphe. So just to give you an idea, we are located approximately like 40 miles north of Bordeaux. We are very close to the river. The river is the Gironde River. The Gironde River is a very, very big factor in our terroir. That's exactly what you're showing there.
Yep.
It's very, very, it is maybe the most important picture of the whole story, because you see plenty of things here. You see that the vineyards are very close to the river. This river is a very wide river where we are because we are close to the Atlantic Ocean. And this river acts as a cooling system, a very efficient cooling system. So when it's very hot in Bordeaux, for example, we are something like 6 or 7, at least maybe 10 Fahrenheit degrees lower, cooler than in Bordeaux. And the other way around, when it's cold, it's warmer where we are. That explains why we almost always escape frost. That's what we escaped frost in 2017, where Bordeaux was very badly hit. We were saved from frost back then in the past in 1991. It's a very, very, very important factor. And and you see, I don't know if you see very well, but you see the gravels there, and the gravels are the stones that were brought millions years ago by the different rivers, because there were plenty of rivers back then, from the Pyrenees. The Pyrenees being the mountain that separates France from Spain. And these gravels are really a specificity of the Médoc overall. But we in Saint-Estèphe have something a little bit different. We have these gravels and we have clay being the smallest element of stone, if we may, a mineral element. And this is a very specific factor in Saint-Estèphe that does not exist, for example, in Pauillac or in Saint-Julien. The specificity of this clay is to, as we say in French, to be hydromorph. So it retains water. And since it retains water, it warms up a little bit more slowly than the gravels that warms up very, very quick. So, and the clay keeps the water. So that explains why, and this is once again one of the main facts of Saint-Estèphe, we have so much Merlot in our vineyards. I think that overall in Saint-Estèphe, we have something like 50% of Merlot planted.
For the whole appellation.
For the whole appellation. People don't know that because they always think about left bank Médoc being Cabernet Sauvignon, which is true, because I think that it's thanks to the gravel, thanks for all it's not only gravels, but all this combination of elements that make terroir. I think that the Médoc is really the temple for Cabernet Sauvignon. And in Médoc, we maybe produce the best Cabernet Sauvignon in the world, really. But in Saint-Estèphe, we have both. We have this Merlot and we have this Cabernet Sauvignon. And that's great for us, because now with what's happening, is it, I don't know if it's only heat waves, it's just a global warming, we don't really know. But very often we have very wet spring, like now in 2020, or like we had in 2018. So we get a lot of water during the spring. The clay swallows this water. And then very often we have very dry and hot summer. And that's exactly what works with us in Saint-Estèphe, because we have this clay releasing the water very gently to our vineyards, and that's perfect because it helps the vineyards going through sometimes some heat waves, and we avoid a very brutal hydric stress. That allows us to really have some vineyards that are working very well in September, and to avoid this stop in all the maturation, because the photosynthesis doesn't work any longer. So everything goes together in Saint-Estèphe right now, and it's a very, very, very complex and fascinating terroir.
And how does that lend to the style of the wine? If you have more Merlot plantings there, what's the defining characteristic of Phelan Segur within Saint-Estèphe in terms of taste, flavor profile, just so that people can understand the difference between wines coming from Saint-Estèphe and Bordeaux is such a vast region with very different styles, just so people can understand a little bit.
Alors, we at Phelan, we don't have so much Merlot. We have, in proportion, we have 59% of Cab, 38% of Merlot, and then we have a splash of Petit Verdot and a splash of Cabernet Franc. But the style, first of all, the style of Saint-Estèphe has very much evolved in the last years. But you have to think that Saint-Estèphe is still a big, powerful wine with tannins. You know, we are talking about serious wine from the left bank. What has really evolved over the last years is that maybe because we are more in harmony with our vineyards, with the land, with the nature, we are taking care of our vineyards maybe in a different way. You have to think that we are working in big properties. We handle 170 acres of vineyard, which represent more or less 600,000 vines. Can you believe? I mean, that's a lot of, the vineyards are big on the left bank.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. But I think that we have dedicated people and we ask them now to take care of each vine in a different way. We have understood that it's useless to ask a vineyard to produce too many grapes. We have understood that we need to find the right balance for the vineyard in its own environment. So we really take care of them in a different way. We have high density vineyards. So we have 10,000 vines per hectare. So it's 1 meter by 1 meter. So there is a big competition between each of our vines. And when we prune them, we adapt the pruning to each of the vines. You know that we have guys in our team who spent 30 years at Phelan Segur, and they work always the same plot. And I'm not going to say that they know each vine, but just by looking at them, they know if they are vigorous, they are not too much vigor, they don't have enough vigor, so they adapt the pruning. And for each of what we do, each step of what we do up to the harvest, we are very, very, we try to understand how the vine reacts. That's very different from the past, which means that by doing this, by lowering the yield, by taking care of each vine as an individual, by being more in harmony with our environment, we may bring our grapes to maybe a better maturity. And that's very important because when we get a better maturity, of course, we don't speak about sugar or potential alcohol because actually what we are fighting too much alcohol. But we have a better phenolic maturity. So we're working on the quality of the tannins, which is a major, major point in our wines from the left bank. So the maturity of our tannins and of course of the anthocyane. So I think that now we harvest very ripe fruit with a better qualities. And so, which means that it's great because you have these wines with tannins, with structure, with power, density, but you get tannins that are rounder. You don't need 10 to 15 years, like maybe 20 years ago, to be able to drink Saint-Estèphe wines. And that's something which is incredible because it's we get better, we get all the qualities. The wines are rounder, softer, and at the same time they have this structure and this concentration and this balance, and it's wonderful. Talking about Phelan Segur, particularly speaking, most of the time the blend is approximately 55% Cab, more or less 45% Merlot. Sometimes we have a little bit of Cabernet Franc. Our Petit Verdot are still too young to go into the Grand Vin. And the style of Phelan, and if Fabrice is hearing me, Fabrice is our cellar master, he would tell me, don't speak about style, speak about signature. And it's very funny because he's right in the sense that what makes Phelan Segur maybe a little bit different from the neighbors, because you were showing the map, we are in the center of the village. You see, you see Chateau, where it says Chateau Phelan Segur. That's one of our plots, which is really, really in the center of the village. We are surrounded by a wall, a stone wall, which means that we could be called un enclos, a clos, very famous clos. And then we have 4 other bigger plots. So the one on the left is next to Phelan Segur, because we are really neighbors. The one on the right is next to Montrose, because for those who follow the life of the Médoc, we actually sold something of 30 acres, 35 acres 10 years ago to Montrose. So we are very neighbors. And we have another plot in the center of the appellation. It's a former chateau that was called the Buisson, and that we integrated in Phelan Segur in 2002. So we have these 4 bigger plots that allows us actually to have different types of terroirs and soils and different characteristics. But our style at Phelan is, I would say, the finesse. So it's a word that sounds a bit strange, because Saint-Estèphe, once again, is big, powerful, and bold. But as we say, I don't want to add, strength or power to natural power. And this is an obsession that we have, and I think it's a good obsession at Phelan, is to respect, first of all, our terroir. We don't want to go too far. We don't want to have we are very subtle and sometimes maybe simple in the way we act with our wines. The vinification is very simple, and we are very subtle and very delicate and precise during the macerations, because these tannins are precious, and you only want to have the good tannins. You don't want to get harsh tannins from the seeds, if you let the wines macerate too long. And so we are looking for a wine with great precision, a great balance, a lot of finesse. Please don't say it's a feminine wine, because I'm not sure that
I wasn't going to.
I'm not sure it means anything, but the precision, the balance, the finesse. Sometimes you may call it classic in a way.
Elegant, yeah.
Elegant, classic, balanced. Some other Saint-Estèphe that I love as well, because I love this appellation, and I think there are so different aspects in the appellation, are going to be maybe bolder, stronger, more powerful, maybe a little more extracted sometimes. We don't want to go there. We just want to be who we are, and express what we have in our terroir.
That makes sense. Back to the basics. So I'm putting up a picture of essentially the two wines that are produced at the estate. Can you tell us briefly, so Chateau Phelan Segur is the Grand Vin, and Franck Phelan is the second wine. Can you tell us how you go about making the decision every year for what becomes Chateau Phelan Segur, what becomes Franck Phelan? Is it already decided by different vineyard parcels, or is it the young vines? Is it just purely based on tasting? How do you decide what becomes Phelan and what is Franck?
It's actually a little bit of what you said. It's at the same time very simple and quite complex. Simple because we have the experience with the team, with Luc in the vineyards, who spent almost 30 years at Phelan Segur, and Fabrice in the cellar. We know our terroir and we know our plots. So we know by experience that some of the plots are going to provide us with grapes which have exactly the characteristic that we need for Chateau Phelan Segur, the Grand Vin. What we are looking for the Grand Vin, we are looking for, as we say in French, buvabilité. So it means to be
drinkability.
But drinkability. But over that, we need to have the potential of aging. To me, and that's I mean, making wine in other areas, in France and, as I told you, in other countries. But I think that there is one characteristic for great wines, les grands vins, great wines of this world, is their ability to age. And so when you have a wine that is able to age, it's the wine that has so many different lives. You know, the wine that we taste now, it's not going to wine that we are going to taste in 2 years, in 10 years, and so on. And it's a companion for all your life. And that's with some plots, they provide grapes that are going to be able to fulfill these requirements for the Grand Vin. We have plots for Franck Phelan. And it's not only the young vines. Obviously, the young vines, they produce berries that are sometimes very charming, you know, with a lot of flavor and a lot of aromas. But we know that they are still young, they come from young vines. So the tannins are not maybe there, you know, so we have to be careful. It's very often, it's tempting sometimes, but we have to be careful. And we select them for Franck Phelan, but we also select some plots that always, even if they are old plots, will always give berries, produce berries with this, once again, fruit forward dimension. And that's what we want for Franck Phelan. We want, number one, drinkability, fruit forward, approachable. Once again, it's still a center step, so it's still structured and tannic and big and dense, but it has nothing to do with Phelan Segur. In terms of balance, it's, once again, it's more fruit forward and it's more approachable. So it's a, I wouldn't say it's a simpler wine, more simple wine, but it's a more approachable wine.
Okay.
And you know, the story about Franck Phelan is that the name sounds strange, but it's the guy who's the person who started Phelan Segur was called Bernard Phelan, and it was back in 1810, and his son Franck Phelan took over. So Franck Phelan is the son of Bernard Phelan, who started the property back in the early 19th century.
And when was the first vintage of Franck Phelan?
It was in 89.
89. Okay. So it's been a little while since you've been making the second wine.
It's funny because sometimes we keep a few bottles of each vintage in our cellars, and sometimes we go back to older vintages, and it's quite amazing because you have the 2005 or 2000, they are just gorgeous, you know, amazing wines. They don't have the same density as Phelan, they don't have the same structure, but they are pretty good.
But they can hold up.
But the good thing about Franck Phelan is that you can drink 2015, 16, 17 right now. It brings a lot of pleasure. And with Franck Phelan, it's a different emotion than with Phelan Segur. With Franck Phelan, it's a vibrant, evident, obvious emotion right now. You know, it's a Phelan Segur. It's a bit more. It takes a bit more to really appreciate Phelan Segur. Franck Phelan, it's vibrant, it's easy, it's joyful, it's a great wine.
Very pleasant.
Very pleasant.
I agree. I do want to show this picture that I think is really interesting. Having been to Bordeaux a few times, this is something that you don't see very often. So the front of the chateau is there. It was a picture that I showed you all before. Right here. It looks like a regular chateau, but then if you look from an aerial view, I think it's pretty interesting to see. And can you tell us just briefly, Veronique, what those buildings are?
Thank you, Céline, for showing this picture, but I think it's because I really think that this picture is very interesting. First of all, a piece of history. You see that a lot of chateaus are facing the river. And we are from the chateau, the front part of the chateau. We are located at half a mile from the river, so it's very close. And you see that in front of the chateau, I don't know if you see it, but there is a big park because we are on a small hill. So we are dominating a little bit the river. And there is a big park. There you see, it's beautiful. Now we have been planting 100 trees during this winter and spring. So it's going to be even more beautiful. And the water is just behind us. What is funny is that, I mean, we could have planted some vineyard just at the foot of the chateau, because we are allowed to. It's a Saint-Estèphe appellation, but we did not do it because we didn't find any record in history of any vineyard in front of the chateau, which seems actually weird because we could. And because Céline, because you visited Phelan Segur, you know that we enjoy throwing out some big parties with several hundred people, and we need this big park to enjoy.
You need a party space in front of the chateau.
But this thing being said, the fact that we have a very long chateau facade is very typical from the Médoc, because I think that the owners at that time, they wanted to show off a little bit. So they were building some very long chateau, but not very wide chateau. So from the outside, you were thinking, wow, these guys, they have money, they are very important people, But then inside, it's very narrow. And in Phelan, there is a big corridor, maybe the longest corridor of the Médoc. I think it's, let me see, in feet, it's 150 feet long. So it's a long corridor.
And I've walked it before, but it didn't feel quite that long.
When you do it several times a day, and one of the very, very different things about Phelan, and I really think it contributes to the style and the spirit of Phelan Segur, is that we have this chateau, which is the private part of the property, but it's directly linked to all the winemaking facilities. And you just have to open the door, and you're going from what we call l'orangerie, that used to be the place where all the orange trees and all the citrus were stored during the winter, into the vat facilities. And it's very different because it gives a different atmosphere. And you see all the roof, the tile roofs on the back is where on the left where we have the different vats, our vat facility, and the rest is where we have our barrel rooms. So we have 3 different barrel rooms, very big, and one long vat facility. It's very unique because usually you have really a private chateau and then the rest for the winemaking. And that tells a lot, I think, about the personality of Bernard Phelan back then in the 19th century, because you still have one stairs where he was going from his room down to the cellar. And that's, there were obviously no computers at that time. So maybe, anyway, yeah, I'm sure he was very committed in the winemaking. They were not living, and I think it's true for a lot of the owners at that time, they were not living all year long in the chateaus, because I'm sure that it was very cold and summer and harvest there. So I'm sure that Bernard was very, very committed, and Frank Phelan, his son, even more. What you see there is our cellar room, where we have all our barrel rooms, where we have our barrels. I like this picture a lot because, as you see, it's at the same time very colorful and very dark, because it's a big room. It's a very long room, and it's always very silent. When you enter that room, it's very funny because you can almost, first of all, you smell the aromas of this new oak, and you have the feeling of the time, because the wines are going to remain in these barrels for a year and a half, and
Yep.
and there is something like, it's not like you would enter a church, but it's something which is very peaceful, and where you know that you have to show respect for the work, respect for the time, respect for everything. And this is a very, very special room. You should have seen Philippe Van de Vivre entering this barrel room for the first time. He was like a child. And you know, that's very funny. And every time I enter this room, I think that I smell it from here. I am actually at home. I smell it from here. And there is such a special atmosphere. And it's very touching. It's a very touching, and it's, and I cannot, talking about touching, I cannot help touching the barrels when you are in this room, because the barrels are like a jewel box, you know, and and the wood is soft and it's warm, and you know that the wine is in good hands in these barrels.
Yeah, of course. Before we wrap up, and everyone watching here, if you have any questions, feel free to comment them. Um, can you tell us, Veronique, just briefly what you've encountered so far? I mean, we're living in a very different time. What do you foresee being the challenges that you're going to face with, living in this new time with COVID-19? What are some things that you have to take into consideration that maybe you didn't have to before, and that consumers and buyers don't necessarily realize are impacting how it's impacting the winery?
Well, that's a very serious matter. And, you know, we were asked to stay at home on the 17th of March. And, you know, we are a team of 32 people at Phelan Segur. Not so many people working in the offices. And for the people who were working in offices, that was quite easy, because everybody was sent back home, and everybody was working on their computers, and that was not a big deal. The contact with the team by Zoom or whatever, but that's okay. Regarding the vineyards and the cellars, that's another ball game, because especially this year with the spring we had and the warm weather, I mean, nature is going so fast.
It doesn't
And
stop.
it's crazy, crazy. Um, we are almost at least 2 weeks in advance. And when you are in the vineyard and you're taking care about 170 acres of land, it's not a small garden. So what happens that, unfortunately, one of the guys in the vineyard uh, was suspected to be in a family with COVID. So he decided to stay at home, which was a good decision. But then the next day, his colleague said, "Oh la la, oh, maybe he was affected by COVID, so I should go to and see my doctor, and I'm going to stay home." Two people left, and then the next day, two other guys left. So when you miss four people in the vineyards at that time, it's a very, very, very hectic time, because it's where the moment where we place all the small racks, small capsules of pheromones. That's very important for us, because we don't use any pesticides, insecticides. So they need to be put in the vineyard at the same time. So we had this to do. We had to start working the soils, because the grass is growing so fast. It's crazy. So we are opening the soil so that we kill the grass, we have to lower the wires in the vineyard, because we have to let the vines grow, and then we will put them up again. We are going to do that now by the end of the week. So it was a crazy, crazy, hectic timing, crazy. And we had to start treating, because it's a warm and wet spring. I mean, we are fighting more especially against mildew, but oidium and mildew. So even we have to be very careful, because we are not using a lot of treatments. And so we have to go regularly into the vineyards to treat. So it was very hectic. Eventually, 2 weeks afterwards, the whole team came back.
That's good.
So that was we were safe. And in the cellars, same thing. A lot of work, because we were preparing the bottling of the 2018 vintage. That's going to happen early June. So we were fearing not to get the bottles or the cork. So we asked our suppliers, please send us the corks and the bottles a month in advance. We don't care. You should see the chateau, Céline. The chateau is surrounded by pallets of bottles, because usually, you know, they are delivered one step after the other.
Right.
And it's walls of bottles, because we wanted to be safe, because we couldn't.
Of course.
We can't afford to not to be delivered and not to have the bottles or the corks. So, and then at the same time, we were finishing the racking of the 19 vintage. Very busy, crazy.
Yeah,
So,
well, there's a lot of things that go on that we don't realize that impacts the way that you work. It's already a year-round job, and with everything going on now, there's a lot more considerations.
and then I mean, I don't know how how it's happening in the US, but then at the beginning, you know, we didn't have any hydroalcoholic whatever liquid. We still don't have so many masks, you know. So the only thing we could tell the guys was, wash your hands on a regular basis and don't keep close. So we implemented a lot of action, so that, you know, in the morning they were used to gathering, so that they were told what to do, where to go. No more. They were asked to come 10 minutes after 10 minutes, so that they didn't gather. They were used to drive in the same car. Forget, over. Stay 1 meter away, and then wash your hands as soon as possible. So we gave them some soap and some water so that they could wash their hands. But at the beginning, that was like we were reinventing a world. And what's happening is that also we take more time to do things like that. We take more time to protect them, to protect ourselves. It takes time. That's okay, no problem. Now it's easier, because we have everything we need to protect ourselves, right. And people are getting used to it. Now it's, I mean, somebody who had worn a mask would have been an alien. Now you go to Bordeaux, and
it's the norm.
It's the norm. It's people who are not wearing a mask is not the norm, you know. Yeah. So and now the question mark is harvest, Céline, because the frontiers so far are closed. We are not employing any foreign workers, people who harvest, you know, during harvest, but some of our neighbors are. And if the frontiers don't get open, we are going to be missing people. I don't know what's going to happen. It seems that it's going to be an early harvest, and so we are going to compete against each other to get the people.
Yeah, that's true.
And how, you know what, Céline, you know how it goes when you harvest. You know, you have 100 people, and 100 people who are together, that you drive in a bus, that are next to each other. So it's going to be something totally different for us. We are working on that right now.
All right.
You know, so that we provide them decent and safe conditions to come and work with us, and that our people, our team, remains also secure.
Yeah,
talking about please
no, go ahead.
No, then talking about how the consumer is going to react and what's going to happen with the primeur. And it seems that because 2019 is absolutely a delightful wine, that people are expecting an primeur campaign. And it seems that in the last 10 days, we are receiving a lot of requests for samples, because obviously nobody came to Bordeaux the first week of April. So journalists are tasting the wines, We already had a very good score marked by James Suckling, who gave us a 95, 96 or something. So, it's starting. We feel that it's starting, it starts boiling. But we know that the US, it's going to be difficult because of the tax. China is a little bit, we don't know how they are going to react. And in Europe, people, like I was talking to some importers in Germany and in Belgium, they know that if the prices are good, they will go for it. That's the point.
That's always the question. But we're looking forward to bringing in the 2018 now that you have all the bottles and corks ready to go. We'll look forward to having the 2018 in stock, hopefully this fall.
Oh yes, because what we're saying is that because of the conditions and everything, I mean, usually, we keep the wines after the bottling for a few months, before releasing them, and I know that the negotiants would have asked us to release the wines a little bit earlier this year. We said, of course, we know the conditions, so we are here to help you, sell these wines to consumers that are going to be very happy to taste them because they are delicious. So let's make things simple and efficient.
Agreed.
I know you agree because you are efficient lady, Celine.
Oh, thank you. So one last question before we sign off here, more on a personal level. If you're not drinking Bordeaux, what are you drinking?
Aye, 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 aye.
I know, no one likes the question, but
It's you want to hear my life. It's a small
no, just
story.
it doesn't have to be a
No,
full of
no, I know. No, because when you know that we all drink a lot of wines from all over the world. I love Barolos, like I was drinking a Voerdio on Sunday. I like the Loire Valley with incredible wines. But if I had to take, I know it's a difficult choice for everybody, but if I had to choose one one wine would be champagne.
That's a good answer. I think that's
I
mine too.
love champagne. And it's not because champagne is bubbles. No, I love champagne because champagne is a wine. I love champagne like a wine, as a wine, not only because of bubbles and happiness and joy and everything. No, champagne is just is bringing everything. A lot of complexity, freshness. It can be vinous. It can be more mineral. It can be anything. It's well, I would have so many different champagne that I love. A lot of them.
Well, we'll have to crack some when we finally get to travel again. I look forward to that time.
Trust me. Trust me.
Veronique, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to hopefully having you in New York or in the States sometime soon.